I will do that. Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for attending Moss Creek Owners Association special member meeting. I'm Jenny Johnson, serving as your president of the board this year. The first order of business is to determine if we have a fully constituted meeting in compliance with the MCOA covenants. Jay Harvey, MCOA secretary, will report whether we have received enough proxies to establish a quorum. Jay, and you're on mute.
Thank you, Jenny. In accordance, I'll read the notice of meeting dated September 21st, 2020. In accordance with the provisions of the Moss Creek governance documents, notice is hereby given that the special meeting of the members of the Moss Creek Owners Association, Inc. will be held via Zoom webinar on Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 at 4 p.m. for the purposes of conducting all lawful business of the association, announce the results of the Board of Director elections, and the proposed changes to the MCOA bylaws. The Moss Creek covenants establish that a quorum requirement for regular or special meetings of the association is 30% of those entitled to cast votes, either in person or by proxy. So even if you plan to attend the meeting, please sign and return your proxy, as it expedites the process of establishing a quorum. This proxy is used to establish the quorum and also provides for full power of substitution, but only as to those matters included on the agenda for the meeting, which is shown below. Signed, John V. Harvey, Jr., Secretary, dated September 21st, 2020. Well, Article 3, Section 5 of the Moss Creek Covenants establishes a quorum requirement of a minimum of 30% of the eligible votes, which for this meeting is 605, either in person or by proxy. We have tabulated 659 by proxy, representing 32.7% of the eligible votes. Therefore, we have established a quorum and may proceed with the meeting.
Thank you, Jay. Today's agenda will include the president's report, a financial review from our treasurer, Mike Himes, and a report from our general manager, John Miller. At the end of the meeting, we will announce the new directors who will begin their term January 1st, 2021, and the results of the bylaw referendum. Following these presentations, we'll open the meeting for questions related to information covered at this meeting. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or in my case, I'm on an iPad at the top of your screen. When submitting your question, please include your full name and address, as is our normal procedure. I will now call the meeting to order. Our next order of business is the reading and approval of several sets of minutes. The meeting minutes have all been posted on the member website. Following meetings: special member meeting of October 22nd and December 10th, 2019, and the annual member meeting of April 21st, 2020, and accept them in the form in which they were distributed. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
If anyone has an objection to approving the minutes as listed above, please state so in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, I will assume you are in favor and the motion will be approved. So we'll wait just a minute to see if anyone goes on their Q&A and objects. Okay, I don't see any objections. Do you, Susanna? All right. The motion is then approved as distributed. Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to our board this year. and thank them for their service. Serving until 2022, Barbara Nielsen, Bonnie Walters, and Lania Wilson. Serving until the end of 2021, Rob Needham, Jay Harvey, and myself. And serving till the end of this year, Kate Shea, Mike Himes, and Skip Leonard. Also serving on behalf of the community this year are Chuck Eberly, Chair of the Audit Committee, and Eileen Hutton, Chair of the Nominating Committee. Mike will be recognizing the Audit Committee members, and I'd like to recognize the Nominating Committee for 2020 as shown. The lifeblood of any community is the membership willing to step up and do the work necessary to make it run efficiently. While too numerous to name individually, I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to see how many of our members were willing to contribute their time and efforts for the benefit of all. Most of the important work is that is undertaken in Moss Creek is done by our committees. And the board is grateful that so many members chose to participate this year. In total, approximately 62 members offered their time and talent to work on behalf of our community. Thank you for your time spent serving the membership. As we have all experienced, 2020 has been a year like no other. Our entire world has been reshaped by COVID. This is something that threatens everybody. Things we once took for granted, we can no longer. Many lost friends and family to this virus, and my sincere condolences go out to you. We can't travel like we could before. Our ability to hug and shake hands is gone. Our access to the wonderful amenities here in Moss Creek has been restricted in the name of safety. Parties? What are those? But through it all, we have become more resourceful, kinder to our friends and neighbors, and helped strangers, as so many have reached out through volunteering and using their financial resources to help those in need. Zoom now has a different meaning in our vocabulary, and this has given us time to reassess our values and our goals. Looking to 2021, we hope to see an effective vaccine, which will free us to move to the future, next normal world. It won't be like the old world we left, and it will be better than the crisis we are enduring now. Moss Creek has weathered this difficult year, and frankly, we've done better than I thought we would back in March. Thanks to the quick and decisive actions by our staff to keep us safe, reasoned and measured decisions by our finance committee and our board to keep us financially stable, and the ability of our members to stay calm and understanding while looking out for their friends and neighbors. We are truly a blessed community. Next, you will hear from Mike Himes, our treasurer and chair of the finance committee, who will speak about our financial situation and the recommendations from the finance committee to the board for the coming years. Please pay close attention. It's important that we all understand what has happened over the prior years leading up to today and what actions are being recommended to the board to keep us financially stable over the coming years. Mike, please.
Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon. Presented on your screen is an overview of what I intend to cover this afternoon. First, I want to talk about the members and the roles of the finance and audit committees. Then I'll review our financial performance through September of this year. This is the short-term view representing the first 9 months of this year. And finally, I'll cover a summary of our overall financial position. This is the long-term view, and it shows how our financial position is trending. I'll give you a spoiler alert. Our finances for the short term this year look great. However, the long-term trend indicates we need to make some corrections to maintain the financial health we've come to enjoy. I'd like to begin by discussing our committees and their roles. The role and responsibilities of the Finance Committee are defined by our bylaws and policy statements. I want to thank the members of the 2020 Finance Committee for volunteering their time and their expertise to the panel. The Finance Committee members this year, I was the Chair of Finance, Skip Lenhart is the Vice Chair. Also joining us are John Lozanne, Dale Todd, George Viveris, Nancy Millette, Tom Finn, and Ken Murky, and of course our President, Jenny Johnson, and our General Manager, John Miller, and Payman Shamlu, our Controller. The audit process is supervised by Moss Creek's Audit Committee, whose functions and duties are explicitly defined in our bylaws and policy statements. I'd like to thank the volunteer members of this committee who share their financial and legal expertise with our community. The 2021 Audit Committee members are, as Jenny indicated, Chuck Eberly is the chair of that committee this year, and he is joined by Judy Johnson, Lynn McFeeters, Jim Panapinto, Chris Hervishon. I am a member as well as treasurer, along with Payman Shamlu, our controller, and John Miller, our general manager. Of special note are the efforts of our staff working behind the scenes to make certain that all financial statements and documentation are completed and presented in a professional, responsive, and timely fashion. Thank you to our controller, Payman Shamlu, and his accounting staff of Nancy Aiken, Cameron Scholl, and Sally Walmsley for their hard work, dedication, and commitment to our members and the community. Now let's look at our operating income as of September 30th for this year. Operating revenues through September totaled $8.1 million, which is $375,000 lower than budget. Lower revenues compared to budget are due to the effects of the pandemic on the clubhouse, golf, and fitness revenues. But on the expense side, we performed better than expected. Expenses and cost of sales totaled $7.5 million, which is $651,000 lower than budget. Reduced expenses reflect savings in wages and benefits, materials, supplies, and equipment and maintenance. Our total operating surplus through September of this year was $633,000. I think you'll find that despite the pandemic and its effects, we're looking very good financially through the first 9 months of this year. On the non-operating side, through September, we had 87 property transactions. Our operating surplus through September was $1.6 million, which is $607,000 over budget. I said operating, I meant non-operating, pardon me. In total, as of September 30th, we experienced a net surplus of $2.3 million, which is $883,000 ahead of budget. As of September 30th, we had a total debt of $2.6 million, including $325,000 remaining on our line of credit, $1.4 million on our equipment loan, and $889,000 on our Paycheck Protection Program loan. As indicated on the screen, as of September 30th, we had $3.4 million in unrestricted cash, which includes the $325,000 in line of credit, $5 million in the reserve fund, and $159,000 in restricted funds for a grand total of over $8.5 million. Our financial strength is measured by our balance sheet. Our total assets increased by 18% and our members' equity increased by 12% compared to prior year. To summarize, we believe it's reasonable to conclude that based on accounting standards and benchmarking, Moss Creek is in a strong financial position. Our balance sheet continues to improve and we have adequate reserves to maintain our infrastructure. Our fee structure remains below that of other full amenity communities in the area, and we continue to attract home buyers and activity plan participants to Moss Creek. We continue to move forward, focusing on protecting, improving, and maintaining our assets, provide residents with amenities that create value and enjoyment, and preserve our natural environment and promote our community to new buyers. Now I'll talk about the long-term view. How are we trending? Our non-operating revenue is generated by certificate fees, which occur when a non-Moss Creek member purchases a property. This amount varies year by year depending on the number of such transactions. While we budget on an expected amount, it is our most unpredictable source of income. In the past, we've used the certificate fees to fund our required reserve deposits, and we still had money left to fund capital improvement projects. This is no longer the case. We conduct a new reserve study every 3 years, the last being in 2017. The studies from 2014 and 2017 identified items that had not been previously included. In other words, they were more complete. And of course, inflation has had an effect over that 10-year span. As you can see from the slide, that amount has increased by over $700,000 from 2010 to 2019, and it looks to increase another $350,000 or so next year. We have not addressed this problem to this point, and we need to do it now. We cannot kick the can down the road any longer. So what are we going to do about it? The Finance Committee has been working on this for most of the year. The Finance Committee has assembled a plan to address it. It still needs to go to the board for approval. Here's a high-level view of what will be recommended to the board from the Finance Committee. First, a one-time increase in annual HOA fees of 6.25% in 2021 instead of 4.25%. This is about $10 a month over the planned increase. Everyone here is a member and should share in the costs. Second, an increase in the activity fee. This has not been increased since its inception over 10 years ago. Next, boaters and golfers enjoy a very special value for the amenities they enjoy, and we propose to increase the annual cart plan fees, and we propose to charge for wet slips above the activity fee. We're a service organization. Cutting expenses can lead to cutting services. So cutting expenses without cutting services is a challenge. But we propose challenging our administration with cutting golf operations expenses and food and beverage by $75,000 each. Our certificate fee of $23,000 is among the highest in the area, so we don't propose to increase it. However, there's an administration fee of $150 per property transaction that we propose to increase to $500. This proposal also includes increases in daily fees such as cart fees, court fees, etc. These sources of revenue are also more steady year to year than our certificate fees. This proposal will generate approximately $550,000 per year in addition to additional operating surplus. I want to also point out that $150,000 of that amount is generated by improving operating efficiency by our administration. We've enjoyed an operating surplus that has increased somewhat over the last 10 years, so we didn't feel that we needed to generate the full $700,000. But the main point is we need to be more reliant on operating surpluses to support our non-operating surplus each year. And it must be structured to reverse the trend we're seeing and address the future needs. This proposal does that. I've just defined the problem by looking at the trend over the last 10 years. But it's equally important to look ahead. As I've said before, we use club benchmarking for our reserve study this year, but we also engaged them to provide for us a capital strategies model. This model looks at projected capital spending from reserves as well as new capital for amenity enhancements. That work is underway, and the final product will be reliant on the final approved budget and 5-year forecast, which must include the final report from long-range planning. Once the capital strategies model is completed, we plan to ask Club Benchmarking to make a presentation to the community. I want to thank you for your time and interest. This concludes my presentation. And now I would like to introduce John Miller, our General Manager.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for this special meeting. Those of you who are veterans of our MCOA member meetings know at the beginning of my report, I normally introduce all of the department managers who are lined up along the wall in front of the garden room. Well, we obviously can't do that today, but I would still like to take a moment to recognize the management team for Moss Creek. They're on the screen. Jim Albano, our Chief of Security, Tom Ruth, our Director of Tennis, Tom Logue, our Director of Golf, Karen Davidson, our Human Resources Director, Susanna Johnston, our Administrative Manager and Assistant to the GM, Payman Shamlu, our Controller, Jim O'Connor, our Clubhouse Manager, and Chef Lenny Giratano, our Executive Chef, Roger Ward, our Water Oak Utility Manager, Mitchell Wilkerson, our Director of Golf and Grounds Maintenance, Pinckney Crosby, our Facilities Maintenance Manager, the veteran of the team, and Mike Paulmeyer, our Director of Fitness and Wellness, who's the newbie on the team. So just kind of picture them lined up against the wall in front of the garden room, and you'll have a good feeling like we're all together in a regular meeting. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize employees who will reach milestones in their tenure during 2020. We don't have any 40 and 30-year recognitions like we did last year with the Edwards brothers, but we do have several employees reaching impressive milestones all the same. Again, on your screen, the high awardee this year with 15 years of service to Moss Creek, Susan Brown, our ARB manager and marina manager, and she does any number of other things as well. One of our 10-year awardees didn't want me to read the names of everybody else that's on the list. I'll remain silent as to who that was, but I think we'll go through it real quickly. Irma Arellana, Clubhouse, Lenny Girantano, Clubhouse, these are 10 years. Josh Goodman, Golf Operations, Susanna Johnston, Administration, Jim O'Connor, our Clubhouse Manager, Scott Woodcock, our sous chef, Carl Woods, who works in Facilities Management, and 5-year milestones for Matthew Brown in the Clubhouse, Sean DeWitt with Water Oak Utility, Shannon Daly in the Clubhouse, Kyle Dubon in Housekeeping, Lisa Kendrick in the Clubhouse, Angel Pueblo in the Clubhouse, Callie Swift in Golf Operations, and Doug Wilson in the Fitness Center. Those of you that are familiar with the hospitality industry know that 5 years of tenure for a restaurant employee is long by comparison with other operations. So we just want to have special recognition of that group. Okay, moving on. As Jenny touched on, this has certainly been an extraordinary year, unlike any of us would have ever expected going in. We got off to a great start in January and February. Then in March, our world changed. The coronavirus completely disrupted our lives here and with our families and throughout our lives. At Moss Creek, we immediately began emergency planning and action at both the board level and the management level. During the first several weeks of the emergency, the executive committee met every day, and the entire board met on nearly a weekly basis. We also had frequent meetings with the management team to evaluate our situation and operations and make adjustments as necessary. I have continued to meet with the executive committee on a weekly basis throughout this time. And of course, I meet regularly with department managers. Also, during the first several weeks, as circumstances were changing, we provided frequent reports and updates to the membership. One of our priorities was to do our best to make sure the membership was kept up to date on the pandemic and how our community was responding. The need for those frequent communications declined as things leveled off and we weren't having to make changes weekly. We took several proactive steps early on to mitigate the risk of exposure to the virus for both members and our employees. We've relaxed some of those as we have learned more about the virus and the best practices in the industry. We have not been able to host many of the member events we normally have each year. We have had to restrict access to virtually all of the amenities, but we have been able to provide ongoing use of the golf courses, tennis courts, pools, fitness center, and dining at the clubhouse in Mackey Grill. Yeah, the restrictions are an inconvenience, and members aren't permitted to host outside guests for sporting activities or dining, but everyone has been able to play their favorite sport and to dine at the clubhouse and now Mackey Grill, essentially throughout this crisis. We are all getting fatigued with the restrictions. We hear from some members that they are tired of the restrictions and want us to decrease them or remove them entirely. We also hear from other members who are grateful that we have maintained the restrictions we have in place. Our clubhouse staff has had members thank them for taking all of the precautions to keep them safe. And at least one couple went on to say that our clubhouse is the only place they are dining out because they feel safe here. For the board and management, the most important priority has been and will continue to be the health and safety of our members and our staff. And toward that end, we will continue to let recommendations from the public health officials and the status of the virus in our state continue to guide our decisions. And while we're on this subject, I want to speak a little bit more about the employees. I mentioned earlier that we have been able to keep all of the amenities open, albeit on a limited basis. That has only been possible because of the dedication of our employees. For many of them, the disruption in their lives from the coronavirus brought more challenges than just work at Moss Creek. They all have families. Many of them have children and or extended families or extended family living in their home. Yet they continue to come to work to keep operations going for our membership. To a person, our employees were not lured by the bonus unemployment payments they might have been able to receive. Many of them did have to adjust their schedules to deal with school and daycare issues, but we retained nearly every employee working when the pandemic began, and we filled some slots that were empty going into the crisis. We had some maintenance workers who, because of childcare issues, could only work a reduced schedule during the week. They came to their supervisor and said that they wanted to work on weekends to fill their schedule. Well, we always need employees available on weekends. That's the hardest time to get them scheduled. So that was a win-win. They got their hours in and we had the people on site that we needed. I know you all appreciate the wonderful staff we have at Moss Creek, but they deserve even more respect and appreciation for what they have continued to provide throughout this emergency situation. Now I'd like to give a short update on some of the projects from 2020. The first project we got underway in 2020 was the construction of new front tees called the Marsh Tees. This work began in January and was completed in early March before the coronavirus was an issue for us in Moss Creek. The response from the membership has been very positive. We had 3 projects beginning shortly before the virus arrived. When the board decided to put capital projects on hold in April, we determined that we needed to proceed with one of those, Mackey Creek Grill. The pandemic slowed our progress a little, but thanks to the hard work of our maintenance teams and our clubhouse team, we were able to get the new grill in place and open for business on June 15th. The response has exceeded our expectations. Mackey Creek or Mackey Grill continues to be popular in mid-October, long after the old food truck would have been closed for the season. This was the first year in our 8-year program to place fresh asphalt overlay on the roads in Moss Creek. The work was completed a little over a week ago. Projects like this that involve milling the existing asphalt and laying new asphalt are always somewhat disruptive for the residents along the roads being paved. We had some minor damage to some irrigation systems. A mailbox was damaged, and some work had to be done where a few driveways didn't intersect cleanly with the pavement. But that's all been done. We did have a few follow-up items that may yet need to be completed. Overall, the work of the contract was of good quality and completed in a timely basis. We did get some questions, however, as to why we were paving cul-de-sac roads first, when there are other roads in worse condition around the community. The engineers who did the road evaluation and recommendations for us in 2017 intentionally scheduled cul-de-sacs at the north end of the community in the first year in order to complete those roads before we pave other roads throughout the community. The strategy on those roads is to get them done first so that in the future we don't have to drive over recently paved roads with heavy loads of asphalt to get to the cul-de-sac roads at the north end of the community. With little traffic on these cul-de-sacs, they will last many years before needing an asphalt overlay again. There has been perhaps more anticipation about when the pickleball courts will be finished than I can remember for any recent capital project. As you know, planning for the project was just getting underway when the coronavirus arrived in our area. The pickleball courts were one of the capital projects put on hold in April due to the financial uncertainty we faced because of the pandemic. When the board removed the hold in August, we immediately resumed work on the project. You can see dirt movers down there this week finishing up relocating the berm to create space captured from the maintenance facility for this new amenity. Early on, we'd indicated that we were working to get the 4 courts open for play as soon as possible, potentially by the end of the year. I outlined all of the steps yet to be done in the October Advocate, so I won't go through that in detail here. Suffice to say, completion by year end was not a realistic timetable. And I explained that in detail again in the October Advocate. A more realistic estimate, I'm sorry to say, for when we will complete the courts is this spring, probably March or April. But we are still working full speed ahead to get the pickleball courts open and active. Please be patient while we complete the work necessary to get a quality final product. Final project I want to update you on is an effort underway to secure approval from state and federal authorities to expand our marina. We are working with an engineer who specializes on marine projects to prepare the application and necessary supporting documents to apply for a permit. You may see engineers at the marina this week preparing an as-built survey of the existing dock configuration and determining the OCRM critical line, along with other key measures that are required for this type of application. We hope to have the application completed and submitted to the authorities by the end of the year. That is all that I had to share this afternoon. Thank you for your attention. I will now turn the meeting back over to Jenny Johnson.
Thank you, John. At this time, I will announce the results from the election of the Board of Directors. The 3 directors elected for a 3-year term beginning January 1, 2001 through December 31, 2023 are, in alphabetical order, Chris Hervishon, Patrick Hughes, and Jody Quinn. Congratulations, and thank you to all who ran and to the nominating committee for their hard work. These new board members may participate at our board meetings beginning on Thursday to help facilitate their transition to 2021. They will be allowed to participate in discussions, but of course not be able to vote since their term officially starts in January. Finally, I will announce the results of the bylaw amendment. A majority of the votes cast are required to pass the amendment. The final vote was 863, or 71.1%, in favor of the amendment, and 351, or 28.9%, opposed to the proposal. The bylaws amendments pass. We have now concluded the scheduled agenda items and will open the floor for questions related to the material covered today. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. When submitting your question, please include your full name and address. And just a reminder, we will post the video of this meeting on our website, hopefully by tomorrow. Okay, let's see what we have for questions. All right. First one, Mike, this will be yours. From Chris Gallard, 11 Fairlawn Court. Why is the Finance Committee proposing to raise annual cart plan fees when Moss Creek is currently the second highest compared to nearby and on-island communities? Only Port Royal was higher than Moss Creek, and our current cart fees exceed the annual cost of the carts, parentheses, i.e., it's a source of revenue, parentheses.
Well, Chris, thanks for your question. As the Finance Committee worked on this project throughout the year, we wanted to have a balanced approach in the way that we increased fees. About 12 years or so ago, the board at that time changed the way fee structures were done here in Moss Creek. Prior to that time, I don't know for how long, but prior to that time, it was essentially a la carte. And the plan for fees that we all enjoy at this time was devised at that time. And that included the HOA fee, the activity fee, the cart plan fees, et cetera. We didn't want to deviate from that philosophy. Oh gosh, excuse me. There, my wife got it, thank you. And there you go with Zoom. That's the way it works with Zoom. Phone rings in the background. But we didn't want to deviate from that model, if you will. That model has served us very well. But as we looked at trying to spread the fees appropriately, as I defined earlier, we felt that it was important that everyone share in these increased fees, and therefore we are recommending an increase in the HOA fee. But we also recognize that golfers and boaters really do enjoy nice amenities for a below market value. And we discussed ways to be able to increase revenue from the golf portion of the business. We actually even at one point discussed tacking on a green fee for every time that you played. And we felt that was a cheap approach to things. It wasn't the image that we wanted, and it certainly didn't fall within the model that we've enjoyed. And we felt the easiest way to do that was to address it through the cart fees. You are absolutely correct. Ours are among the highest, but our dues structure combined with our activity fee is well the lowest for other, compared to other communities. And the balance of it is, it's still a great deal. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, Mike, thanks. You're going to be the big winner in getting questions today. So
Thank you.
from Janet Kelly, 3 Indigo Court. Any word on whether the PPE funds will be forgiven? Mike, yours again.
Thanks, Janet, for your question. When we filed for PPP, I believe it was back in March, it was outlined that there would be a time for us to file for forgiveness. The process for this is that when we filed for the PPP loan, you file to the bank and the bank grants that as appropriate. And the SBA didn't really get too involved in that process, but for the forgiveness aspect of it, the SBA does get involved. So the process is for us to file with the bank, with South State, where we do have the PPP loan. We file with them, and then after they do their due diligence and make sure that they have all the forms in order, so to speak, it gets submitted to the to the SBA rather for forgiveness evaluation. I believe the bank has 2 months. I'm not positive. I think it's 2 months that they have to process their work, and then the SBA has 3 months to process to get back to us. And that process was not even opened up to us until just recently. We only filed for that within the last 2 weeks. I really don't anticipate that we're going to know whether or not that PPP loan is forgiven until after the turn of the year. Hopefully sooner we'll know that. I have confidence that it's going to get forgiven, but I don't count those chickens until they hatch. And we're not going to know for a while yet. So. Thanks for your question. I hope that answered it.
Okay, Mike, you might as well just leave your mic open.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet, for the question. All right, this one's from John Walsh, 4 Black Mink Lane. What will the amount be for the increase for boat slips and cart fees?
Thanks for your question. Let's start with boat slips. It depends on the slip size. For a 20-foot slip, one of the smaller slips, $800 a year. And for the largest 50-foot slip, $1,800, and it's graduated by slip size in between those. For cart fees, the increase in the cart fee for a family plan is $162, and for a single cart plan is $111. Hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Mike. And I'll point out that all of that is subject to a board vote this Thursday.
That's correct.
Okay, one from Marilyn Yantis, 12 Longleaf. Why are we talking about increasing boat slips when only a small number of residents use the marina? Why are we not continuing to make plans to improve the clubhouse? Many will not come to the club because of the condition. So John Miller, I'm going to give you this one.
Okay, well, as far as the level of usage at the marina, actually we have a long waiting list for wet slips. It's been filled for years, and so it's not. Well, if you're down there, you're only going to see the 69 boats, or fewer than that. Obviously, not every slip is full, but that's all we can accommodate, and that's why we're looking at maybe expanding, if possible. As far as not continuing to make plans for the clubhouse, the board appointed, or the president appointed a capital planning task force or group this year, made up of board members of key departments, or of key committees, I'm sorry. And we have been trying to look forward with improvements in the clubhouse as well as other locations. But we don't have anything concrete that we're in a position to present, but I can guarantee you we haven't forgotten that at a minimum, we need a remodel in that clubhouse. And we certainly need some improvements in the back of the house, in the kitchen. So we're continuing to look at that. It hasn't fallen off the table. It's, I think, quite, I mean, I think it's clear, it's the most needed improvement right now in our community, because prospective buyers come here and tour it, and it just doesn't present well. And I know that's not what it's all about, but that's an important part of it. You want people that visit here to be impressed with not only your home, if you've got it on the market, but with the amenities, because that's what helps sell real estate in a community like Moss Creek.
And John, here's a related question, if you would go ahead and handle this one from Peter Sparso. Will there be a member vote on the marina project?
Well, first, we don't know if there'll even be a marina project. That's why we're going through the application process. We've had a real strong interest among the Boat Owners Association and from the Bostwick Recreation Committee to explore the application process. And the only way to go through this, if you just submit a query and say, hey, you think we can do this? They're either not going to answer or they're going to say no. You've got to go through the entire application process. We don't even know if we'll get permission. If we do, that'll be a decision that the board will make as we move forward with the plan on it. So sitting here today, I can't tell you whether there would be a vote on it or not. It's not required by our covenants, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't be.
Okay, so let me give you one more then. While you're talking about votes on covenants, I'll start answering it, and then John, if you would add to it. This is from Dave McSavany at 24 Stablegate. It's now very clear that our capital funding has a shortfall of approximately $650,000 per annum. Will the board commit to no further CapEx expenditures until the method to fund this gap is approved by the membership? And Dave, our governing documents assigned this approval actually to the board. So the board will be making a decision on how to fund this gap this coming Thursday, and there'll be another meeting in November. So John, would you like to add to that?
Well, I would just say that as Mr. Himes said during his presentation, the Finance Committee has done a tremendous amount of work for several months in work sessions trying to determine how to fill the gap between the significant increase we've had in reserve contributions compared with our revenue increases for capital. The rate or the fee proposal that the Finance Committee approved on Monday and the board will consider on Thursday will go a long way toward filling that gap. So hopefully we'll be correcting the issue that you're noting, and we will have the capacity to do some needed improvements that don't necessarily fall within the reserve fund.
Okay, thank you, John. Mike, here's one for you. Another one from Chris Gallert, 11 Fairlawn Court. How much is the 2021 activity fee that's being proposed? Did not hear if it was stated earlier.
Thanks, Chris. I thought I stated it, but whether I did or didn't, the increase is $250, taking it from $1,000 to $1,250 per year.
Okay, and Mike, you might as well leave. Off mute. Here's another financial one from Marjorie Barrell. Please provide a dollar amount for the proposed revised annual HOA and other activity fees.
Hi, Marty. Thanks for your question. The increase, the total increase that the Finance Committee is proposing for the HOA fee is about $373 roughly. And other activities, I'm not quite sure what you're asking about, but if you're asking about individual cart fees and individual court fees, I don't have that at this time. These are the large items. We are going to increase those. The exact dollar amount has not been solidified yet. That will happen as administration puts together the budget for next year, as well as the 5-year plan, and that'll then be reviewed by the Finance Committee and the board in November. So those individual fees are still yet for review.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to note that Tony Guasto, and forgive me if I mispronounced your last name, at 47 Timber, it appears like you're trying to ask a question, sir, but I'm not able to see a question. So if you would give that another try. Thank you. Let me
Jenny,
go
we
back.
got one at the very bottom.
All right.
From Mr. Guasto. You want me to read it?
Oh, I see it. Now I see it.
Okay.
Thank you. They're coming in fairly quickly now. I realize we had a banner year with real estate. I guess my concern is, how do you feel towards the future of real estate sales? We presently have 11 homes on the market. So who wants to handle that one? John?
Yeah, I can. You know, the forecast for real estate is a tough thing to do. We certainly wouldn't have thought sitting here today that 2020 was going to be a boom year. We were clearly wrong. But you're right in your analysis. An awful lot of our housing inventory was sold this year, and whether there will be a number approaching what we normally see in a year next year, I think is a real question mark. I hate to try to predict it, but I think it's a valid concern as we look forward the next year or two, whether or not there's going to be enough housing, enough units on the available on the market to reach the sale levels that we expect and rely on for our certificate fee revenue.
Okay, hang on. Let me keep looking. All right. I think we've gotten all of them. There is another one from Dave whoops, wait a minute, just lost it. Hang on. McSavany 24 Stablegate, which is off topic in terms of what we covered in the meeting, but I think there's been enough community concern about this that I would like to read it. And John, this is for you, although I will start it off. I've lived in Stablegate for 15 years. During the past 12 months, I felt the most vulnerable to crime here since we arrived. What is the board doing to encourage Mr. Miller and Chief Jim to increase security, protection, and surveillance? And Dave, I'll assure you the board is aware of this, as is John Miller and Jim Albano, and they have taken steps to look at that, and I'll let John give you the answer. Thanks, John. And you're on mute, John.
There we go. Obviously, Jim and I are certainly on top of this. The security staff is well aware of the recent thefts. One of the things that we're doing is to patrol in that area more frequently during our evening patrols. But you know, we've got one person on patrol overnight and one person in the gatehouse, so it's not like we can be ever present in one area in the community. But having said that, we're trying to have a greater presence in Stablegate. The other thing that Jim is working on with the camera expert that we deal with for all of our cameras around the property is to see, and not only in cameras, but are there other types of surveillance equipment including cameras, but beyond that, if there are, to enable us to better monitor the fence line along the equestrian center. We don't know if that's where they're coming in. We don't know if somebody called in a vehicle that, is how whoever the culprits were got in. I'm not suggesting that's the case, but, we don't have any record of anybody blasting through the gate. We'd have certainly been on top of that. The likely possibility, and we checked the entire stretch of fence. There was no break-ins through the fence along the berm on Stablegate Road. The only likely place for a pedestrian to access is the fence line from our gate down to where the really heavy growth begins. And we're looking at ways to see if we can monitor that better. And we're searching for any other ways to do that. We don't want residents in any part of the community to feel unsecure. And unfortunately, Stablegate is the first place they come to if they do come over the fence, or if they do make it into the community. So I don't think anybody's looking to pick on Stablegate, but it's just the first neighborhood that they reach. So I know I'm not providing you a definitive answer, but I do want you to know that we're not only aware of it, we're sensitive to it. And we do want our members to feel safe and secure. That's one of the reasons you buy within a gated community. So, please be assured that we take this seriously, and we're trying to find ways to improve our surveillance.
Thank you, John. A question from Sharon Abhalter at 86 Victoria Drive. Who pays the increased admin fee, the seller or the buyer? John, Mike, which one of you would like that one? John will.
I'll take it if I can get my mute off here. The seller pays the administrative fee.
Okay. Hold on, I'm just checking. I thought I saw another one come in. Yes, I did. Carmela Junger, where is the equity between the single cart fee versus the family plan? Carmela Junger, 81 Victoria. Mike, you want to take that one?
I'm sorry, the question again, please.
Where is the equity between the single cart plan fee versus the family plan fee?
Well, we looked at that for the number of rounds played by individuals that have the cart plan fee, and in whether you have a single plan fee or a family plan fee, the number of rounds that would equate to still become quite a bargain. And so there's still that choice that each individual has to make as to how many times they're going to play per year.
Okay. Thank you. I am not seeing any other questions. Susanna, by any chance, do you see ones I can't see? Oh, wait. Chris Gallert back. All right, Chris. 11 Fairlawn Court, Chris Gallert. With the addition of pickleball in 2021, why are we not going to offer a tennis/pickleball only, golf only, and a tennis, pickleball, and golf option to provide 3 different activity fee price points? Mike.
Thanks for your question, Chris. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the financial model that we have now was one where we changed from an a la carte system. And we did discuss this, and the feeling was that by doing that, we're moving back toward an a la carte system, kind of breaking the model that we have, and the determination was that we didn't want to head in that direction.
Okay. All right.
Jenny,
Uh,
the only other one I see came in through a chat. It's from Deborah Dignan at 14 Toppin. Can we require the day passes be turned back in as they exit our neighborhood? I'm assuming she's talking about the security day guest passes.
Okay, Mike. No, John, I'm sorry. John, that's a John question.
Well, as a matter of a rule, sure, we could say that you have to do that. Keep in mind that some people get a pass, they come and go throughout the day. They're not going to turn them in. And just from a logistical standpoint, are we going to have yet another person in the gatehouse to make sure that people driving out are putting passes in a basket or somewhere, and there's everyone driving out on the exit side is stopping if they happen to have a pass? I think that's one where you have to evaluate what's the value received versus the effort or cost to do it. I realize there could be a concern, somebody have a pass and maybe they could give it to somebody else. And when they drive back through a second time that day, you know, they're dated, so they're not going to be coming 3 days later. But, you know, unless we discovered that we had a serious problem with people sharing passes and people that we don't want in the community getting in here, I just don't know that that's something we need to make a priority at this time.
Okay, thank you, John. Mike, I've got two for you. Back to Carmela, who says, so why not charge by person? And Carmela was the one who asked the question about the single family versus family.
Right. The best I can tell you, Carmela, is that it was discussed as part of the options in the Finance Committee. And as the analysis was done on it, the determination was made that regardless of whether it was a single or a family cart plan, it was still a decision that individuals could choose to make, whether they wanted to pay individual or choose the plan that was made available to them, whether they could choose a single or a family cart plan. And for those golfers that play a lot, in either case, it is a great deal. And for those that don't play very much, the option is there for single cart usage. We did discuss it and decided not to go there through quite a bit of discussion. I can tell you just in general, this is one of many things that were discussed in the Finance Committee of different options. I can tell you there were many, many, many hours of discussion, backed up by even more hours of analysis and research provided by both administration and the various members of the Finance Committee. So I'm sorry, that's probably about the best answer I can give you at this time.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And Tony Guasto had a comment that the bylaws read the purchaser was responsible for the transfer fee. I can't speak to that, so.
I can address that. I believe the transfer fee, which is, we don't have a transfer fee. We have a membership certificate fee. So that we try not to call it a transfer fee because that's not what it is. It's a membership certificate fee. That the covenants say, unless the seller furnishes such a certificate, every purchaser shall pay a sum. It's a negotiable fee between the seller and the purchaser. If the seller doesn't pay it, then the purchaser has to pay it. But our covenants don't specify one or the other. And I believe he was maybe talking about the administration fee that used to be $150 and now it's going to be $500. That administration fee has always been on the seller side of the closing statement. I verified that with Susan Brown. So I hope that answers the question, Mr. Guasto. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Sharon Abhalter commented it was called the administration fee, not the $23,000. So I think Susanna cleared that up, and thank you, Sharon. Another question from Mary Moore. Will there be a section on the member site with a breakdown of all fees for 2021? Mary Moore, 64 Timber Lane. Mike or John?
Well, I guess I'll start that and let John finish it if that's okay. Once all of the fees are established and finalized and then approved by the board, then there is a mailing that does go out, and it will have the fees on it. I guess I'll turn it over to John or Susanna for further on how that is actually communicated.
We actually mail a list of fees to the membership toward the end of the year when it's time to sign up for the decision for 2021. What are they going to continue doing, or is there something such as, let's say, a card plan that they no longer want to continue with? So each member will receive that.
Okay, thank you, John. I guess, Jay, you saw that comment from Tony Guasto. Okay, he was just saying, hi, Jay. Okay, Susanna, unless you see more questions, I think we're out of questions. We went through 26 of them. So, being no more questions, I will now entertain a motion to close the meeting. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. If anyone has an objection to close to adjournment, please so state in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, I'll assume you're in favor and will adjourn the meeting. So I'll give you a minute to see if we get any one objecting to adjourning the meeting, which we rarely do. All right, seeing no objections, the 2020 MCOA special meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for attending.